Hello. Ελάτε από εδώ κάτω.
Doctor.
Καλημέρα. Κάτω, τραβάει. Welcome to Thessaloniki. You guys want to have it here.
Thank you so much. It's mine.
Very welcome.
Τι κάνεις? Όλα καλά.
I'm Kirk. Nice to meet you.
Hello, I'm Yanis. I'm John.
This is Yanis.
Nice to meet you. Very happy to come.
Very nice to meet you. Is that running right now?
Yeah.
Hi, we like it here in Paris. It's very nice. We're gonna need to
Όλα καλά. Τα παιδιά όλα εδώ. Ωραία. Είμαστε όλοι.
Are you going to the hotel with us?
Yes, I am your driver.
Okay.
And I am a guitar player as well.
And then who should we give the book to?
Pat, were these really your footprints?
No. You don't think I would ever do this?
No, I guess maybe they're his, but they're enlarged anyway.
No, I think they're Joe Fields' wife.
Oh yeah? There's nothing like the graphic work of the old vinyl records.
Yes, that's
Really.
true.
That part is the ritual.
Yes.
This is the ritual. Great.
And this is my favorite album. This one is.
Hey Kirk, I didn't know you played guitar, man.
Yes. Yeah.
You don't know how much you honor me.
Well, it's my honor.
From the deep of my heart. Thank you very much.
Chris, thank you so much. I'm so surprised, man.
Thank you very much.
See, thank you.
Στοιχειότυπα.
And what channel is the vocal mic in?
What?
Microphone, vocal mic. No, this one. All right.
Toasting.
All right, let's try something with the monitors. Bring down. Bring up. Try to change it over.
No, I'll go receive again.
φίλων της jazz και δημιουργικής μουσικής σε συνεργασία με την Kazan TV Productions. Έχει την μεγάλη τιμή να σας παρουσιάσει έναν καλλιτέχνη με πολύ μεγάλη ευθύνη που είμαι σίγουρος ότι όλοι τον γνωρίζετε, που έχει επηρεάσει τη μουσική σκηνή της jazz κιθάρας και όχι μόνο, έναν από τους μεγαλύτερους jazz κιθαρίστες όλων των εποχών, τον Martino.
Thank you. It's really a pleasure. How many? Good. Great. Any reed players like tenor saxophone, alto saxophone, any of this? Yeah, great. Any percussionists here?
Drummers.
Drummers?
One of the best.
Great. Great. I'm sure I've missed some of the, valve instruments, trumpet, flugelhorn. Yeah? Excellent. Trombone, of course. Okay, I'm going to wait until everyone gets seated and gets comfortable. Most of the establishments that do this are not open today. So we have only 7 copies of what was brought in. And I bring this up again so that you can have copies made for you. Just contact and have these made afterwards so that you can have your own personal copies. I think that's important. What I have brought today for this seminar is how I've learned the instrument, how I've learned this instrument. And when it comes to other instruments, other players, there's something that we have in common. One of the first things that is very important is if you look at that instrument there, the piano, it has 7 white keys and 5 black keys. And because of this, you add them up and you have in complete 12 keys. And they sound like this. The white keys sound like this. The black keys sound like this. When you add them together like this, the way they're joined, you get this. 12 notes, 12 tones, a chromatic scale. The guitar, on the other hand, is this. Each one of its strings is a chromatic scale. So on and so forth. It's nothing but chromatic scales. And not only that, this instrument is tuned in intervals of perfect fourths. This is the majority of the strings, the 6 strings, are tuned in perfect fourths, with the exception of one set, this set here. That's a major third interval. So these are perfect fourths, perfect fourth, major third, perfect fourth. When I was a little boy, I used to do things like this, I'm told, and I remember certain things, I don't remember all of it, but I remember one of the things that I used to always do when I was curious to play with something for the first time. I did something like this. I would find something like this, and I would watch it for a while. I would feel it, and it would make me feel good, and I would be playful with it. And then I would do this. Just through curiosity. It's a very childish thing to do. Children do that. Okay? I did that again with this. I added a finger to it. And I saw something there. I saw this one here. These 3 notes were C, E, and A flat. And these 3 notes I was stunned that of all the things that I found out about this machine, these were the same all the time. In other words, this is the same as this, is the same as this. And when I took that and did this with it, it did something else. This one here, C, E, A flat, became the same one right in here, C, E, A flat, the same fingers. And that also did the same thing vertically as you see it here, and also horizontally like this. Always the same fingers. In other words, automatic. And when I took it and did this with it, it was the same thing a half step higher. And then when I went to the next set vertically up, it became a major triad. B flat major in this case. And when I went up again, the next set of strings, the same fingering, E flat minor. And I was really stunned that the guitar automatically taught me two things. It taught actually three things. It taught me this form here, this what is known as an augmented chord. And it also showed me a major and a minor that came out of it when I opened it up vertically. A few years later, I noticed something about this. Number one, the guitar has these two strings are the same. And again, I'm going to bring to your attention that what I'm going to share with you today is how I've learned the guitar twice in my life. The first time I learned it like a little boy with these things. And the second time, I learned it from all of the notes that I had written out throughout the years, maybe 30 years, over 30 years of it. And it took me 17 years to learn it again. But here, I noticed this. Because of the tuning of the instrument, perfect fourths, major third, perfect fourth. Because of that, the only difference in all of the strings is this one right here. That one there is one step lower, a minor second or a half step lower, one fret lower than all the others. So therefore, that meant if I did this, these were the same. When I did this, the only difference was I had to raise this string one half step. And there was the augmented. Again. So here's the augmented, automatically, augmented, augmented. Now when I took that fingering and raised that to the next set, there, it became B major. And I raised the second string a half step, and here's the augmented again. So the second string is the only thing that has the key to all the secrets on the guitar, see? Unlike the piano is 7 plus 5. It's addition. For percussion, a percussionist is really, in a way, its initial stages, very simple. It's based on division. You have a whole tone, you divide it into two parts, you now have the half note. You divide those into 4 parts and you have the quarter note. You divide again and you have the 8th note. You divide and you have the 16th. You divide again and you have the 32nd, 64th, and you can even divide that more complex into triplets, quintuplets. All of these different odd systems of mathematics, but for percussionists, initially, division. The piano, initially, subtraction, rather, addition. The guitar, initially, multiplication. That's why this one is different than that. And the easiest way to see this in a different way for the first time is to see it as multiplication. In other words, when I found this, C, E, A flat, there were 3 of them. There were 3 of them. Now watch what happens. If I lower any one of the tones in it 1/2 step, let's say I lower the A flat, this one here, to G. I now have a C major triad. Let's go back to the augmented. I'm going to lower the E to an E flat. I have an A flat augmented, or an A flat major chord, I'm sorry. Back to the augmented. If I lower the C to a B, it becomes E major. So within this, and now from this point forward, I started calling this form a parent, a parental form. And because it's a parent, it just gave birth to 3 children that were new to me at that time. That's how I learned the major chord. There are 3 major chords in this parental form. Back to the parent. I also found that when I raised any tone in it, C to C sharp minor. Now, before I go any further, keep in mind that when I did this, when I lowered that same note, the C, to a B or a C flat, it became E major. When I raised it, it became D flat or C sharp minor, the relative minor in the key of E. So the relative major and the relative minor is within the parental form, and not formed like this, not by taking the root, the third, and the fifth. That's piano. The guitar is faster and easier by taking this parental form, this triangle, okay, and lowering any single tone or raising any single tone in it. Gives you all the majors and minor alterations of the triad form. So here we have, in this augmented parent, 3 major chords, 3 minor chords. The relative majors and minors come from that. Now, if you look at the way horizontally it did its thing, like this, before it reproduced itself here, you know, C, C, C. Before it did that, the parent itself did this. There are 3 majors and 3 minors in this one, 3 majors and 3 minors in this one, 3 majors and 3 minors in this one, and 3 more in this one. There's all 12 keys before it reproduces itself in its next area of activity, horizontally. In other words, here's the 3 major chords in the first one. The next one. The next one. The next one. And then the next one here was the same as the first one. In fact, what I found out then from that point was all of its inversions, the guitar taught me the inversions, not my music teacher. The music teacher, and this is what's really phenomenal about this. What we have since Johann Sebastian Bach, we have an instrument that was chosen for our language of the musical community, which is the piano, the well-tempered clavier. That's strictly for the music community, for the musicians, for everyone involved. But each instrument has its secret keys to the mystical, to the magic. And I've been fortunate enough to find out the keys and to use the keys to this teacher. When it comes to the scalar forms, they're excellent for the piano, but they're also, by the same token, they're in 2 dimensions, not in 3, primarily because the piano is horizontal, from left to right. The guitar is a matrix. It's not only from left to right, but it's also from top to bottom. So it has longitude and latitude, as opposed to just one way all the time. So let's go on. Let's do the same thing in terms of the staff, the music staff. Take a look at the paper that I gave you, to page 1. Everybody, if you can, share that. You'll see something that already has been touched upon. If you look at example 1, you'll see the 12-tone scale, and I chose to place that scale not from a C, but from E, primarily because the guitar's lowest tone, open string, is an E. So too is its highest string. And if you see it the way it's written, you see only music, only music. Now there's something, that is very profound. And what is most of all profound is how things have codes. Codes. Music has a code. That's why most people who never studied music are not familiar with the language at all, and even keep a distance from it because they don't understand what it means and they don't understand the symbols in it. Let's decode music. And that's what happens on page 1. It's a decoding of something that is no longer in the hands of musicians, but now it moves into geometry. Now we take the staff and we put a finger under the left side and a finger under the right side. And we slowly raise it into a curved circle. And it joins at 12 o'clock high. Now, in that chromatic scale, you can see in example 2, the E, A flat, and C are, if you were to look at your clock or your wristwatch, E would be at 12 o'clock, A flat is at 4 o'clock, and C is at 8 o'clock. Everybody see that? You now have something that has been decoded, and its similarities transcend music and begin to touch upon many things that we see every day in living. In fact, it's over our kitchen sink, or it's over the doorway into the kitchen, or into another room in the house. It's the clock on the wall, But that's a chromatic scale, the clock itself. And that's how I learned more about these forms, and the intervals have now become something that I see in everything. So now let's take a look at what's happening. If you look at the triangle in major thirds, here's that same chord. And I'll put it here so that it formulates from E to A flat to C. Okay, 12 o'clock, 4 o'clock, 8 o'clock. Now if I take that, and now I hold it like a triangle, and I move it one notch at a time, each time I do that, it does this. And that's a G. When I go to A flat, it's the same as the first one. It's the second automatic inversion of the first one. You see, does everyone see how inversion takes place now in terms of its architecture? It's intervallic architecture. And this is not coming from harmony in theory with the scale, the major scale, and the root, the third, and the fifth, or in this particular case, major thirds as an interval. So that's the first thing that happened. Now, I came to find that when I did this, and I'll give you an example like here, and by the way, all of this is going to lead itself into, step by step, into the complexity of improvisation in a much more profound kind of way. But we'll stay here for the moment, and step by step I'll lift it up. What happens here in terms of finding out is I learned this. Number one, there was the lowering of each string, and that produced the major triad. Of the triad, it became a perfect fifth like this. Closely at my fingers, no matter what your instrument is. Watch my fingers. If I were to say this particular form, those are the horizontal inversions of it. If I were to want to create nothing but 3 automatic inversions of C major triad, all I have to do is lower the A flats to G. Here's A flat to G. Here's your first inversion of C major. Here's the second one. Here's your third one. These 3 are exactly the same shapes that were in this place vertically, but now they're horizontal. In this place vertically, they were in 3 keys. E major, A flat major, C major. The same fingerings now horizontally are, let's do it the way they were here. Now they're here, like this. In 1 key. So now I have, automatically the guitar has taught me every inversion of every major and minor chord. Why? Because watch what happens here with the guitar. If I take this one is the same as that. Therefore, this is the same as this. This one is the same as this one. Therefore, this is the same as this, is the same as this. This one is the same as this one. Therefore, this is the same as this, is the same as this, is the same as this. And each one of them, no matter where they're played, gives me majors and minors everywhere in the instrument. Not only that, Wes Montgomery used to play octaves. These octaves are also used like this. If I have this, here's the octave of this note. So therefore this is the same as this. This one here, this one is the same. So therefore this now becomes this. And all of the majors and minors are now abundant, and they multiply themselves tenfold again and again, in every key, in every direction, without an intermediate teaching you a certain amount this week, a certain amount next week, at a cost. Here we have access to Pandora's box, and that's what we're talking about here. So it's a decoding of how the instruments unfold of their own accord, and I think this takes place not only with the guitar, but also with the piano, and also with valved instruments, as well as all of the stringed instruments. Of course, with the stringed instruments, viola, cello, violin, contrabass, these are tuned in a different way. The contrabass is, of course, the exception. That is tuned exactly like this. So the only thing different is it only gives these for the augmented parental form. See? But all of the majors and all of the minors, for areas of improvisation, due to familiarity, is now available to the player in a faster way that is not dealing with the white keys or the black keys, but still covering the full chromatic row. If I were to take this and use these are adjacent. In English, the word adjacent means in a row. Okay. Non-adjacent would be not in a row. This is the sixth, the fifth, and the fourth string of the guitar in a row. If I were to use the sixth, the fourth, and the third by putting that there, now it's a 6-4-3 group. That's a non-adjacent group. And again, again, as I said before, the same thing, the same phenomenon occurs. Okay. If I place it here on a 6/4/3 group, this takes place. Resolutions and inversions of major and minor triads are accessed through those groups from the parental form, which was primarily an augmented form. And that's improvisation by the use of these particular forms, and we can call it jazz if we want to call it that, because it can be seen that way. But it's the instrument unfolding of its own nature, some of the most beautiful different resolutions and changes in things. That's the triangle, and that's what has given me enjoyment in certain idioms of music. A good example would be if I were to do this. This particular E major from this particular voicing of an augmented parental form. And it gave me this access to the architecture of this particular composition, the standard. They even begin to touch upon idioms of music, different types of music. So that's the issue in terms of decoding things. What happens is these forms of architecture begin to transcend the application of these architectures, so that we can now get closer into the way the machine works, and it unravels itself. Instead of, if we were to take the skin off a baseball and want to see how long what it contains it really is, we would be foolish to cut it and to try to pull it off and take a closer look at it. But if we just embrace it and touch it lightly, it begins to loosen of its own accord until finally it unravels itself. And it stays in one long piece, just the way it was in the beginning. And that's more realistic. The second of the two two parental forms. Remember that the first one was like this. It did something automatic and magical. It did this. Of all the forms on the guitar, like say for instance, very simple forms like these chords that are inversions. Look at my fingers. They're dominant seventh chords. They're seventh chords. It's a C seventh. C seventh, C seventh, C seventh, C seventh. The fingerings change on every inversion of it. But these forms, C augmented, E augmented, A flat augmented, is always the same. There's one other form that does that, and that's this form here. That's called a diminished chord. That's an E diminished, a B flat diminished, a C sharp diminished, or a G diminished. And in example 2, that's the right hand circle. And that unfolds in terms of its inner body is at 12 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and 9 o'clock. And furthermore, when it comes to decoding, it's not only the music and not only the square, but it's also north, east, south, and west. That's another decoding of it that we go through every day in terms of everyday living. So it's more than music. It's in society. It's in our cultures around the world. It's also this. If you look at 12 o'clock high at E, then E, F, and G flat, before it goes to 3 o'clock at G, the minor third, you can then consider E, F, and G flat winter. And that's now considered 3 o'clock G, A flat, and A, spring. The seasons, the 4 seasons. B flat, B and C now becomes summer. And D flat at 9 o'clock, D and D flat becomes autumn. These are structures that really go far beyond music itself. And one of the most powerful things for me personally that allowed this to be fruitful for me was that no longer was the music interrupted by everyday living. I began to see music in everything. And that gives me music all the time with no interruption. And in fact, my responsibilities at a very early age became a musical experience in themselves. And I think this is something psychologically that is different for each of us. But I think that primarily you're here to find out a little bit more about me. And by sharing these intimacies with you, at least you can see what I draw from, what I learn from. So now, does everyone see what just took place there? We have two things. We have the triangle, and we have the square. And if you even want to see more decoding of the same, now 2 of them together, put the 4 triangles before they repeat. Put the 4 triangles in a row like that, and then just the way we did the staff like that, take the 4 triangles and curve them around like that and push them closer in until they join at the central point. You now are looking at a pyramid. And at the base is 4 points that the triangles rest upon. And that's the architecture of a completely different structure, you see. So they all meet like this. Like this one here did this. Augmented. Augmented. Ah, major. Ah, minor. And it did it in terms of the process itself continued. Well, this one does the same thing. Here's the minor third. it does this. Now watch what happens when the little boy takes this and does the same thing again, and playfully curiosity brings out some secrets. Here's the first one. It's a four-named dimensional diminished form. If I go to the next set of strings on the guitar on the inside groove, it now becomes, this particular voicing is several things, but generally speaking, it's a D7th. It's a D7th. Here's D, the root. Okay. Here's F sharp, the third. Here's A, the perfect fifth. And here's the dominant seventh, which is C. And because of this, it has the seventh in the bass. And not only is it C7th, but it's also access to what basically is the architecture of fusion music, okay, with polychords. In this particular case on the guitar, you can't really get a full, but there are exceptions. You can't get a really full polychord, but you can get a specific triad over a pedal tone. In this case, that would be D major over C, otherwise known as a D7th. Two names for it. One name fits bebop, D7th, or the blues, D7th, or pop music, D7th, or rhythm and blues, D7th, or country music, D7th, and the other fits D major over C, classical music, it fits fusion music, idioms, again. Again, the same thing, we just did this. The next one is a 7 flat 5. This would be a G7 flat 5. In fact, look at this. G, the root, F, the seventh, B, the third, and D flat, the flat 5. Watch what happens at the flat 5. G, the root, F, the seventh. Let's see if I can keep this up. B, okay, here's the B, and D flat is the same as each other, are the same. They're both the same thing. So it's a mirror image of itself. So now this is telling me something really magic. This is saying, I do this. Automatic, just like the other one. Just like the triangle, I'm a vertical square, and I'm all the things you see all at once. And now look closely at me, it says. Why don't you try to lower one of my notes? It becomes a dominant seventh chord. The moment you lower a note. G to G flat, G flat seventh. D flat to C, C seventh. E to E flat, E flat seventh. B flat to A seventh. So here I have these two parental forms. One is a triangle, one is a square. And like a triangle gave me nothing but pure majors and pure minors, and it gave me access to a broader vocabulary at a very early age. And that really opened up the doors for improvisation in terms of jazz and the application of interacting with other serious musicians who were actually formally trained through this mechanism. Go to page 2. Page 2 and page 3 literally show the difference between the piano and the guitar. You can literally see the piano as a heptagon with the white keys, with a 7-sided geometric figure, and a pentagon as a 5-sided figure, whereas the guitar is a triangle and a square. But both do exactly what they do because of the invention of the instrument itself. Let's see. On page 3, you see it at the bottom, it says initiation, the word initiation. And I use that word primarily because I found something out about the guitar strings. There was a decoding, and I was initiated to decoding definitions of things because of these repetitious similarities. Decoding the guitar opened up for me every possible string group on the instrument. In other words, if I were to say of the 6 strings, 6, 5, 4, 3. 5, 4, 3, 2. 4, 3, 2, 1. If I were to say 6, 4, 3, 2, or 5, 3, 2, 1. Remember, the ones that are not mentioned are silent. In each of these cases, by lowering any single tone from those groups of this parental form, in any shape, let's say this one here is 6, 4, 3, 2. The 6th string, the 4th, the 3rd, and the 2nd. The 5th is silent, and the 1st is silent. Therefore, if I lower a note, let's say the C sharp, this one here, now I have a C7 that looks like this. And if I did this, and lowered all of the C sharps to C, I automatically get all of these C7ths. The first one is here, the second one is here, the third one is here, the fourth one is here. In fact, there are 20 from those common groups. But if you turn the page to page 4, on the left-hand side, which is page 4, you see these symbols as strings. Okay, so that if you look at the top that says first string, 1 string, the one on the left-hand side of that horizontal column is this string. The one under that, right next to it, to the right of it, is this string. The next one is this one, and this one, and this one, and this one. And if you look way down to the bottom of the page, the second from the right, you see that all 6 are there also. And when you look at the one right next to that, to the right of it, you hear this, silence. Everyone clear on what these mean? These are the strings of the guitar. Look at 2 string sets. And you see where there are dots in those square boxes? Those dots are the octaves that Wes Montgomery mastered. So that if you look at the first row from left to right, the one on the right-hand side is these 2 strings. To the left-hand side, on the next below it, you'll see these 2 strings and these 2 strings. On the right-hand side, the second from the bottom, you'll see these 2 strings. These are the octaves of the 6 strings, okay, that Wes really mastered. But more than that, more so than that, there's a decoding once again here. Primarily because those forms came from China, not from the guitar. They came from the I Ching, the Book of Changes from the Chinese philosophy. Not that there's any interest in Chinese philosophy, but look at the decoding of a continuous replication of working systems that are worldwide in every culture there is. And I think it's a phenomenon, it's a very profound phenomenon that this instrument and all these instruments display exactly how these systems have been designed inventively and continued again and again and again. And that's the way we function in motion at a very fast pace with continuity. Clear to everyone in terms of where these came to me? Everybody understand?
Yes.
Good. Okay, I've already covered quite a number of pages that are included in this with their graphic displays and diagrams that show you exactly how to do that. So now let's move on. Let's go to page 13. And if there's any questions, if you happen to look at a page and it seems confusing, please feel free to ask. I want you to have that freedom, because that's what this is all about. Page 13. Initially, we began with E, A flat, C as a parental form for the augmented interval, the major third interval. And you can see it in the column to the left, the augmented formula. Here's the formula. Well, there's the parental form itself. Okay, and if you look at the division of the column itself on the left and the right, you'll see that if you raise the note up one half step, you see the word up vertically across the entire column. It gives you the minor. And right across from that, the other side, to the right side, you have down. By lowering any tone down, it gives you the relative major. Okay? We have something else to decode here that's, again, profound of its own nature. Up and down, over and under, good and bad, right and wrong, major and minor, night and day, fast and slow, oppositions, the opposites, yin and yang. These are all a repetitive manifestation of the same decoding of something that is latent within every form of invention. So it's to be kept in mind because it's extremely valuable in terms of definition and perspective. If you look at transformations, you can literally see how simple the movement of the triangle itself creates the next sibling as a parent. You see on the left-hand column, the parent. And you see only one of the 4 in a row that produces all 12 keys. This is only producing singularly 3 keys. 3 keys in the major, 3 keys in the minor. But if you did the same thing with all 4 of them that are stacked vertically, you'd have all 12 keys, all 12 majors, and all 12 minors. The one next to that gives you the geographic nature of how these things look, almost like rectangles, okay, triangular in shape. That's what that's talking about. And it's giving you exactly the formula itself, the transformations. On page 14, the same thing is displayed with the minor third interval. Now, in the sense of jazz, what those 2 forms did for me, the second one was closer to bebop and rhythm and blues and all of that. Because keep in mind that if I have a diminished chord like this, and I lower the G to a G flat or in any key, this particular voicing represents, here's a good example of what it can be used for idiomatically. That particular voicing of a dominant 7 is really used a lot in the blues.
pops up, and these are dominant sevens. So with that, keep in mind that I don't want to put it to a C in the key of C, the tritone. For the guitar players, while I'm here, I remember a time when I used to do this jazz-wise. I would have a line that I would play, and I would feel real comfortable here with it. And here's an example. One more time. And I'm going to lower it a half step. So I realized that if I did that in every key, right on horizontally up the neck, I could do it anywhere. But when I got to this one, my fingering changed. Because of the open strings. So now all of these were part of the family. It was a stranger. Different fingering. I never realized at that earlier age that all I had to do was this. Realistic in content, and it must be essential for all of us to remain as realistic as we possibly can, so that the instrument will unravel of its own accord for us without an intermediate with opinions. And that's what this was all about. So it's a constant learning about these things. So now let me show you exactly what they gave to me with line forms that were improvisations or linear improvisations, and how the instrument unraveled itself in terms of areas or vicinities of activities. Here in this particular first place, if I were to do this, and you remember that it came from this, here's the C, the root, C7th, came from a C sharp diminished. In fact, all the C sharps see that? Everybody see that? So here. C sharps to C. In this area, if I wanted to improvise on this particular chord or any of its alterations, they would generally take place right around here. 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 Actually, the chord is this. And here. There, okay? So all of these areas of activity, improvisationally, are taking place vertically in those vicinities. Now, let's decode something that is very common for all of us, no matter what the instrument is that we find ecstasy in. Let's call this the first floor. Let's call this the second floor. The third floor. And the attic. Between those different proportions of the house, which is the topic or the motif, there are stairways. There's nothing more close to a stairway and similar to a stairway than the minor second. Each step is one step down, just like this. Okay, steps. What really has helped me a great deal improvisationally is the use of an intermediate, almost like glue, that allows these different positions in the house, vertically and horizontally, to be attained in motion. So that if I'm here, let's say, and I'm improvising in here, and I'm doing this, let's say, and I want to get down to this one, all I have to do is minor seconds. That's the easiest thing for me. Like pivot points. In fact, all the floors of the house do the same thing. You see how I'm just doing this. In fact, if I were to do it like this, you see the stairways unfold minor seconds. So it's very close to that, and that's what I do. So if I take this form here, let's pick a page. Page 19. It says there in the paragraph to the right, suspended in the center, it says, when each of these 6 separate areas are completely mastered, the 7th, which is the full fingerboard, becomes activated as a free canvas for any improvisational topic. The entire instrument immediately becomes whatever the motif has been chosen in terms of communicating through. Okay? So in this case, if you turn to page 20, now we're talking about inversions, the same thing that came from, let's say, this, turning into dominant 7ths, like this one did this. Vertically, it gave me 4 keys. Here's E, B flat, C sharp, and G. E to E flat 7. B flat to A 7. C sharp to C 7th. G to G flat 7th. Line forms do the same thing, and keep in mind that no matter the fingerings themselves, look at my fingers for a moment, just for the book. There's 2 different types, again, like oppositions, the opposites, day and night, in and out, yin and yang, over, under, good and bad, major, minor. Here's full fingers, all 4 fingers, and barred, 2 fingers, the opposites, again, full fingering, incomplete. There are 2 full fingers. There's this one and this one. And there are 2 bar systems. This one and this one. Now, horizontally, that was vertically. There are 4 different keys. E flat 7th, A 7th, C 7th, G flat 7th. Horizontally, here's one of the 4 chords. C 7th, all 4 fingers. Second inversion, barred. Third inversion, barred. Fourth inversion, full fingers. A 7th, barred. Barred. Full. G flat 7th, barred. Full. Barred. Everybody see how that is? It's just like a repetition of what you saw vertically. The only difference is horizontally you get inversions of everything. Vertically you get 4 keys of the first inversion, or any one of its type. Line-wise, the same thing happens. If I take a line like this, and that's what's written here, fourth finger, again the opposites. Right, fourth finger. Left, first finger. So I did fourth, first. Now first, fourth, first, fourth, first, fourth, first. If I said fourth, it would sound like this with the same finger. But remember, the second string has to be raised a half step. And it's easier to do that with the third finger. So, and then finally, first, fourth. So now the entire topic or motif has been displayed across page 19, so that you saw each and every area of its entrance, and exactly where the inversions of these line forms hold themselves intact. The fingerings are placed on page 21. And let's turn the page to page 22. And keep in mind that what I said earlier to you in terms of a close look at how the instrument has unraveled for me personally, and how I've self-taught myself, how I've learned the instrument from these ways of doing it. These are what really helped me out as a player. I took this form here from page 21 and transposed it to several different keys. In fact, 6, because now I have it moving in descent on from page 22 on for the next few pages. I have it moving in descent as a whole tone scale. In other words, D minor would be this, C minor would be this, B flat minor would be this, A flat minor would be here, G flat minor here, E minor, and then the second inversion of D minor is now here, which used to be here. Now it's here. Everybody see that? The difference between the two? So I use this scale, this whole tone scale. You see how that's moving up the neck in ascent? And what took place with these forms were these. First inversion. Second inversion. Third inversion. Fourth inversion. Fifth inversion. Sixth inversion. And again, the entire fingerboard is a motif, or a connected, full motif, full topic. Topic is the entire fingerboard. So these took place, and I demonstrated it within a 4-3-2-1 group. In other words, I forced myself into only these 4 strings. And that came about because in the earlier years when I was with Willis Jackson, Sonny Stitt, and Gene Ammons, I had really developed this hand along with this machine yet. And one of the biggest problems was this hand was so aggressive that I broke strings in the middle of a performance. And it was impossible in those days to get off stage, go get a set of strings and change the string, because I would have been fired. So what I had to do was to learn how to play on what was left on the instrument. So I had to really force myself, and it was a great procedure to work in my hotel room with certain strings missing. So by doing that, I forced myself into areas like you just saw, like this. Instead of going here, I went here. Instead of here, you see? And then by the same token, I also took all the time necessary to do it like this. Which is the inside 4 strings instead of the outside 4 strings. And then also with these strings here. You see, so all of these different sets really helped me out to gain more familiarity across the entire instrument. Turn to page 33, and hopefully you'll be able to see 33 and 34 at the same time. Again, the word decoding. In fact, if you go to the page before 33, which has no number on it, you'll see the word decoding. Complexity to simplicity. That's right in the back of page 33. I remember a time when it was very, very difficult for me, and I even avoided even listening or thinking about certain types of chords that I was afraid to play through because I didn't know what to play. I found it very difficult to play to chords like a major seventh. You know, like songs like all of these major sevenths were such strangers to me during that period of development that no matter what the songs were called for by Jug, Gene Ammons, or by Sonny Stitt at that time that had a major seventh in it, I felt belittled and I felt afraid to take a chance at it. Whenever a minor seventh chord would come up, I was in heaven because that was my favorite chord. Any kind of minor seventh, I enjoyed to the max. That was my high. Okay, like these kinds of minor sevenths, a minor seventh flat 5 chord, like used like. So here I would play through this and this, and then when I got to this, I would play a melody. And it worked like a charm. It was again the decoding of the opposites. Intellectual, you know. Intellectual. And then simplistic melody. And they made sense. But they were still separate from each other in terms of a totality, a unified whole, all as one. When you look at page 34, you're going to see 2 things. In fact, before we look at page 34, let's take a close look again at page 33. It's a song. Let's say the first staff has these chord names in it. Here's a C7 flat 9. B flat, E flat minor 9, A flat 7 sharp 5, D flat minor 9. All of these different funny names for these clusters of these harmonies, these chord forms. You know, C major 7 over A. Those forms there let's call them complex. Let's call them hard names. And then look at page 34, and look at those same complex names in larger print, which are referred to on the left-hand side of the first symbol, chords, and beneath that you'll see another word in smaller print called substitutions. The substitutions all say minor seventh, nothing but minor seventh. In other words, in the forms that were I was afraid of, I found my best friend. You see, I found my favorite, easy thing to do, no matter what the chord was, whether it was giant steps or whether it was the blues. It made no difference what it happened to be. Any of the songs had the same forms in them. So let me play the melody, and I've got a laptop, if it works. We'll play the chords, and I'll play the melody of this song so you can hear the song itself. First, I'll play them just the melody. So you might want to follow the lead sheet. Now, if you remember what I played earlier, just as a representation of the minor seventh, I did this. And I played it all over the neck. And then I did this in descent as whole tone transpositions of it. So I'm going to represent the improvisation with just a motif, a motive, that will represent the minor seventh substitution as an improvisation that'll be contained within this one form. As you see on page 34, C7 flat 9 is the first cluster. And you see below that D flat minor 7th. That means I'm going to play D flat minor, this melody. And then F minor. I'm just going to transpose that very simple little representation of the minor seventh to the chord that you see written above the substitution. So you have an idea of the topic of what the improvisation is all about, architecturally. Here we go. Everybody see how we can improvise on a motive in this particular context, and you can see the simplicity of one favorite type of vehicle, and the vehicle is this vehicle everywhere that it takes place. Across the entire neck in any key that it takes place in. The improvisation shall now take place accordingly based upon that approach. you understand, this is what I think about, and this is how I've learned the instrument. And this is what the instrument has said to me time and time again. Now, you know, at this point, I'm hoping that you have some questions. I've tried to compress close to 50 years in the short amount of time that we've shared together, and I've gone out of my way to define for each of you. Any questions from any direction that you would like to ask, I would be happy and pleased to be able to interact with you. So please, any questions? Yes?
How important is formal training in music?
Absolutely essential, prerequisite. It is essential to learn the modes. It is essential to learn the scales. It is essential to participate in formal training. And it's essential primarily because if you want to participate in the musical community in this world, in any culture it takes place within, it is essential that you understand the language that musicians speak to each other through. You can't have a special, perfect way for yourself, but it's essential that you know the modes. It's essential that you have access to communicating with other musicians. This is essential. Does that answer your question? Yeah, these are very important things. A good example, you know, from your question, you brought to my mind the modes. Take a look at the very end. There's a page that says 2 examples. Yeah, 2 examples. And one is the Ionian mode, and the other is the Aeolian mode. Unlike the Greek alphabet, the English alphabet has single letters. And in those single letters, the first 7 letters of the English alphabet is the Aeolian mode. In fact, most people who use the English language rarely notice the fact that it's an A minor scale. It begins as an A minor scale. You know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G. The Ionian mode, the white keys of the piano. And the opposites. In this case, in the very small print, the translation of the word beautiful and the word ugly. Okay, because of the scalular's translation across the English alphabet, you see below it in the Ionian example, C, D, E, F, G, actually C, D, E, F, G, A, B, then it repeats, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, and then finally the last, that's 21 letters, the last 5 letters, C, D, E, F, G. Because of that, each letter has a tone now. So the word beautiful sounds like this in the Ionian mode. Of course, it can be done with any kind of division of the 26. You can use 2 scales, let's say from Israel. Adonai Malach is one of the exotic forms that can be used for that. But we're using, just for simplicity, the Ionian, the C major scale. So here's the word beautiful. It sounds like this. The word ugly sounds like this. And look what it's suggesting. It's suggesting, take me somewhere. Again. Yes, you have a question.
Can you play your own name?
Can I play my own name? Of course I can. That's a great question, sure. Absolutely. Let's see what it looks like. The letter P in the Ionian mode, and that across the C major scale, the letter P, below the letter P, I see the note D, the tone D. Of course, A is C, and T is A. So D, C, A. Okay? Okay? Let's try it in a different octave. Like here, it's in one place. D, C, A. It's already just introduced itself. And of course, remember what I did here when I said the word ugly did this. It's now an introduction to something new taking place. A song. I could have said like, I could have done this. Closer to both sides now than beautiful and ugly. That's both sides now. The word PAT being DCA. I used it like this. Here's the D. Resolution intervallically. Below that, you'll see Aeolian mode. And what I chose to do there was a student came to me one time. In fact, the album, the last album that was released, was based upon translation. One of the songs, the title of the album is Think Tank. And the song that was used was composed right there. Coltrane, tenor. And of course, improvised resolutions as well. It came about because a student wanted to know more about how to play through this. As I played earlier, giant steps. Seems a lot of guitar players want to play giant steps. So we worked together, and I tried to share with him as much insight as possible to get some dexterity with regards to simplifying some of those things. But at the same time, it was more important for him to see more than just the song and to take a look at what he was entering creatively. So the word Coltrane, the spelling of John Coltrane's last name, against the Aeolian mode turned into these tones. C-O-L became T-R-A-N-E turned into these notes. He played tenor saxophone on giant steps, so tenor was used. And then finally the last improvised resolution. Against this kind of motif, one of my favorite albums of John Coltrane was Blue Train. So the word blue turned into these letters. B-L-U-E. If you look at the scale and the translation of it, B is B. L is E. U is G. E is E. So out came a completely different addition as an option or an alternative to the study that this particular individual wanted to gain a little more insight into. And that's, again, a great example of decoding. To decode one system to be useful for another. And you'll find that in quite a number of 20th century composers. In fact, here in Greece you have one, Ioannis Xenakis, who's a great composer. Also, worldwide, there's Christoph Penderecki, and there are quite a number of others, Takemitsu from Japan, and from the United States, and of course from Germany, Karl-Heinz Stockhausen, have used systems of this nature that are extremely essential for a broadening of alternatives and options, compositionally, as well as architecture and math. Any other questions? These are the things that have helped me to reestablish when I find myself sometimes feeling interrupted by responsibilities. And what I mean by that is I might be in my study at my desk in the ecstasy of a creative moment, as joyful as it can be and as sacred as it is, and cherished for what it really does internally. And then suddenly I forgot that I had to go pick up the dry cleaning. And there was a time when I used to turn and say, well, what a drag. I have to stop doing what I really like to do, but I gotta go and I've gotta go get that. So I would go out and I wouldn't enjoy, it would be an interruption of what I felt like doing, no matter what it was. Until finally I began to see the music, a continuance of the music in license plates, in addresses with numbers, in what people were saying as a witness to what they were saying. Two people would be on the corner of a street, and one would holler at the other, and I would, just the word holler was enough. So these are things that I think decoding are really profound in what they offer us for a continuity, for a continuance of what we really are blessed with. And that's the reason for using it for that purpose. Any other questions? Please.
Well, my friend here is not confident about his English. I will try to ask what he thinks. What I think he's asking is, he would like to, how would you suggest to put up a practicing regime, dividing your time between different kinds of things like early harmony, early mastering, the fretboard, and so on?
How much, is this possibly meaning how much should I practice? Whatever it is that I have to practice.
How much time you have to learn harmony or practice?
Sure. There is nothing greater in terms of the learning process of education than participation in a social context with others who are already gifted with it. There's something that is magnetic, and there's something that produces, in turn, an effect upon us, where we're affected by others and their insight in other things. And we learn without even knowing that we're learning the process, because it becomes subliminal. It's from inside. It comes, we don't remember exactly what he said or what she said, but then next week, suddenly, something pops up, and we do remember. And now it makes more sense because we said it to ourselves, and we reminded ourselves. That's something that I think really has a great deal to do with an ongoing manifestation of living and participating in a very active way, realistically as possible. Now, because of that, I must ask a question to everyone here. How many of you drive automobiles? Raise your hands. Okay. Now let me ask you another question. How many of you practice putting the key in the door to open it when you need it? Well, you do. You're supposed to. All of us did that. We all did that. But we don't do that anymore because we don't have to. We've absorbed that. It's become second nature to us. Just like walking and just like picking up a fork. We don't practice the fork. We don't practice the use of the spoon. We don't practice how to pour the milk into the glass anymore. We learned how to do that. And it was part of our life, and that's how it happened. And that's my answer to you. In terms of harmony, in terms of theory, in terms of any of the facilities that are demanded in the music realm, these come about of their own accord. And the more you're active within it with others, the better it is for you. They become second nature to you. And I think it's also a great, has a great deal to do with your intentions. Your intentions. If you intend to be a professional musician, a craftsman at the highest level, then your intentions are going to bring you to facilitate all of the processes that are necessary by mentors that are qualified and equipped to help you to achieve what you intend to achieve. So working with others, I think, is essential. But in terms of practice, it depends upon your intentions. My intentions, you might think that I'm really interested in being a jazz guitar player, but I'm not. I'm more of a theoretician. That has always been my interest. And playing jazz guitar pays my bills. And also I enjoy it immensely. The rhythm of it, the emotions of it, the interacting with other players who were combined and were dancing through our instruments at each other and with each other. So I enjoy that immensely, but that really is not my intention. My intention that I use this vehicle for, my destination is to learn more about myself, the inside of myself, and how I can find similarities in the inversions of things, the pace, the rhythm. I have a rhythm. When I walk, I have a rhythm. When I write, my penmanship has a rhythm. The way I think about line forms in terms of precision takes place with this hand. Practice-wise, I practice a great deal with this hand. You know, I find what is found. This hand, and let me put it to you this way, this hand is a graduate. This hand is a dropout. Because this hand is so aggressive. A great example is that it used to break strings because it had no control with concern to the instrument itself. I used to break the strings, and until it dawned upon me that the solution to the problem, which the teacher at that particular time was saying to me, you need to practice more your right hand, and don't pick so hard. That's why you're breaking your strings. So I tried to do it. I tried to do what the teacher advised me to do, and suddenly my ecstasy was becoming monaural. I was losing touch with my own joy, my own. So I found that another way to do it was to just go out and see if I could buy heavier strings, heavier, 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 until they were so heavy that they would never break. And that was my solution. This was the dropout. It could not adhere to the rules and regulations of the teacher. This was the graduate, because in the process, the graduate learned each area, each room in the house, and studied them very deeply and very precisely. Okay? So that has a great deal to do with practice as well. Practice is the student, practice is also the physician. So it depends upon intention and how we approach that. Any other questions? Yeah.
Did you transcribe in the past? I mean, did you copy any?
Did I copy? I tried to at first. But because I also was very successful in participating with the opportunity of working with some great elders when I was very young, I saw something happen that changed my intentions. I no longer had intention to transcribe, primarily because I saw something that most students who do transcribe Correct. When they transcribe, they fail to realize that their interpretation or their definition is incorrect of what was played and why it was played. A great example. I did an album with Paul Chambers. Actually, the album was Richard Groove Holmes, and it was in the 70s. And we recorded it in January of the year, and it was very cold, and Paul Chambers came in from Europe into New York City. Actually, it was at Rudy Van Gelder's studio in Englewood, New Jersey, right outside of New York City. And it was very cold, and Paul came in right from the airport with a hard shell case on his contrabass. And when he opened the case at Rudy's studio, from the outside cold being in luggage coming through in a hard shell case, and he opened it in Rudy's studio in the heat, the bass exploded. And the strings broke and the top cracked. Well, in a period of maybe 45 to 1 hour, 45 minutes to an hour, he readjusted to a bass that was in the corner of the room with dust on it, which was left at Rudy Van Gelder's by another bassist. And that's what he used on the album. The action was real high. The sound was different than what he had intended to use, his own instrument. Therefore, the solo that he played, if transcribed by the student who was under the impression that he played what he played because that's what he wanted to play, was incorrect. That's when I stopped transcribing. Because the student was missing the true reality of what causes us to express ourselves in the conditions that are affecting us, which could be the temperature of the environment, it could be the personalities of people that are obtrusive, it could be the polarity between two members of the ensemble that is not as warm as it would like to be. All these things have a great deal to do with why we, let's say, do something like that in the middle of our solo. Because it's aggressively saying what we want to say, and we have the ability to do so creatively. So that's what I mean about transcription. You can only get a very mechanical alternative from it, but you don't really get the real picture. So I stopped transcribing a long time ago. Any other questions? We're almost ready to start making a transition and getting ready for the performance this evening. If there are no other questions, yeah, I see your hand. Yeah, please.
Most of the times we've heard that when improvising, we must sing the notes we're going to play, let's say. But here in the seminar, we approach that from, let's say, squares and triangles. When you improvise, let's say you sing the note you're going to play after that, or you structure a building with squares and triangles?
That's a very valid question. It's difficult for me to answer that with regards to a proficient technique. Singing, in the sense of the melody itself that I want to play, I was asked to do that. I spent time with a gentleman, an artist by the name of Dennis Sindoli in Philadelphia at a very early age. And that was part of Dennis's procedure, which was sight singing. I felt, in a way, part of me felt left out because it called for me to adhere and begin to work with a book that was about sight singing. And whenever a book was placed before me, this disappeared. And I didn't want that. It was alienating to me. When I do play, I invisibly within my heart and my soul, I feel what I'm playing. So I think it's a form of sight singing, but it's internal more than it is external. At the same time, I really am moved sometimes by from India, for instance, percussionists, tablas, and also sarod and sitar players who sing what they play, rhythms, the tala systems, the ragas. So that I'm impressed with that. But I personally don't participate that way because it's easier for me to feel it on the inside. Does that answer your question? I think it's valid, I really do. I think it's extremely helpful for a lot of players. I haven't experienced it as of yet. Maybe I will at some point. Any other questions before we call it a day? Yeah, please.
I was just thinking about an anecdote because I remember it. You know, this decoding business is not always easy to understand. And I remember once when Oliver Lake in the Decoding Society was coming to town, and the local newspaper got it all wrong and called it Oliver Lake and the Recording Society.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it is, at times it's very abrasive, and at times, it depends upon how it's seen. And if it's seen judgmentally, you know, in terms of a selective choice on behalf of any one of us as individuals, then it may have it may produce an effect that is going to produce one of its oppositions, either pain or pleasure. But if it does so, and the individual has truly, honestly and truly stepped outside of the process and objectively witnessed it from a distance and seen it for what it really is and how similar everything really is, you know, like the major and the minor are part of the parental form, just like everything else is part of the unified whole. If a person, and I only speak for myself, the ability to step aside from it from time to time and see it from a distance is extremely rewarding for me. And it has having nothing to do with anything judgmental whatsoever. But it's internal. At any rate, such a pleasure to have a chance that you've given me the time to be so intricate in this intimacy that we're sharing right now. And I want to thank you for that. This evening is going to be a little bit different in terms of its intentions. It's going to be a performance with no description, with no definition. But it has its own perspectives, which I hope you enjoy as much as we will enjoy in the process. I want to thank all of you for coming in and making this a very special moment for me. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.